Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 65 of the Don't Be Ridiculous podcast. Jeremy and Clark Palmer here with you. Man, let me tell you, this is why we love sports. I mean, you have those, I feel like a handful of times a year, you have those moments, and the college football games on Saturday were absolutely tremendous. It's the best two playoff games we've ever had at one time. We've never had two good playoff games in college football on the same day before. So that was absolutely tremendous. And then, big NFL weekend. It's really exciting time for sports right now. And I feel like at this time of year we just jam all the football in that we can until it's like a last gasp until it's over.
So we're sick of it and then it's over, yeah.
Yeah. So really exciting. But yeah, First thing we want to talk about is, obviously the college football playoff games. So, we have a championship game. It's going to be TCU against Georgia. And, first of all, let's just in general, these games were just fantastic. I was really impressed with how the games went and happily surprised at the same time. Let's talk about TCU Michigan first because that was the first game. This game had everything. I mean, everything. Had 6 turnovers. You had 96 points scored. You had fumbles. You had interceptions returned for touchdowns. You had questionable referee calls, questionable coaching, just absolute craziness. And then at the end, Michigan still had a chance to win the game on the last drive. And, of course, that blew up in their face. Like most things Michigan tried in that game, just blew up in their face. It was really incredible game. TCU started off the game, got out to a lead, partly because of Michigan's just horrific mistakes. I thought that, I know, I was listening to ESPN today, and Paul Feinbaum just can't wait to rip on Harbaugh. So he's like, it's an annual tradition. Jim Harbaugh gets out coached in a bowl game, which is, I just think, tremendously unfair. But in this case from the other day, it is true. They did get out, surprisingly, it looked like Michigan was not as prepared as TCU was. TCU's defense was ready for everything Michigan was trying to do. And, I thought, they got out to a lead and then Michigan kept coming back, but then they would just keep making mistakes. And, and then at the end, somehow, some way, Michigan still had the ball under a minute to go with a chance to try to win the game, and they were unable to pull it off. So I just think, overall, I want to give TCU credit, but at the same time, it's really hard for me to do because this is a really bad loss by Michigan. They threw 2 interceptions for touchdowns. Usually when you do that, you never win a game. They fumbled the ball on the goal line when they we're going in to score, and just horrific mistakes. But Michigan had more yards than TCU did. They threw the ball much better. They had the lead in time of possession, but it was just one of those things. It was one of those games. Every time Michigan tried to do something, it just didn't work out for them.
So, is it more that, I kind of hate this question. Is it more that Michigan lost the game or TCU won it? You can say both ways that, there's things TCU did, but, it kind of, I guess it feels more like Michigan lost it because, you could argue they should have just kicked the field goal on that first drive, and then they tried that play, which is not really, that's not what Michigan does. They tried something where they toss it to one guy and then another guy came around.
They basically tried the Philly special where they were going to throw it back to the quarterback.
And, so you have that. You have the 2 pick sixes. You have them blitzing a lot, which I guess is uncharacteristic for them, which resulted in huge plays for TCU. It just made it easier for them. And then I guess it's a little tough to say that they didn't run the ball as much as they should have because they were behind a lot of the game. But, look, they went down the first drive, and then they got stopped, and then they stopped TCU, and then they threw the pick six?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you could argue they should have just ran the ball a little more and maybe shouldn't have, because they just gave up. There was one touchdown. It was just like, it was a swing pass or something, and the dude ran all the way to the end. It's like, what are you guys doing? So yeah, I give TCU credit because I thought they played pretty well on defense. They were able to get to JJ McCarthy a lot. And I thought overall their defense played pretty well. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I guess you could say Michigan kind of lost it more than TCU won it. I don't want to take credit away from TCU, but if some of if there was only one pick six and not two, maybe Michigan wins the game.
Well, I don't think either team played really well.
Yeah.
This was not a clean, well played game. But I think TCU did a great job of applying pressure to Michigan, making Michigan have to play in a way that they didn't want to. They were sending guys, like they basically, TCU's playing that strange defense where they play 3 down linemen and 3 linebackers, and they were just sending guys, at random points, just at them. And I don't think, Michigan was not prepared. I don't understand how Michigan had a month to prepare and they weren't better prepared to run the ball against this defense. It was like they didn't know what they were doing. And I heard Joel Klatt saying today, like Michigan was running a lot of zone runs where it's just you string it out and everybody kind of, takes their man and you try to run, you pick a hole and run through it. They didn't do a lot of guards pulling and centers pulling to the outside, which is what Michigan normally does when they run the ball. So it's kind of confusing, number one, that they weren't able to run the ball. But the thing that bothered me watching the game was I was like, why is Michigan not adjusting? Like they should have ran the ball more with McCarthy, run more RPOs, because every time McCarthy ran with the ball, he was really difficult for them to stop. So I didn't understand why they didn't get the quarterback more involved in the running game. And, then it forced Michigan to have to throw the ball a lot. And, they're not equipped to throw the ball 30 to 35 times a game, which is what ended up happening. And McCarthy did make a lot of plays. Like, they did make a lot of plays throwing the ball, but he also made some big mistakes throwing the ball, which kind of cost them. But that sequence early in the game where Michigan goes for it on 4th down with some trick play for no reason when they should have probably kicked the field goal, or, quarterback sneaked it or done something really, it felt like, and I heard Colin Cowherd saying this, Michigan was trying to be cute on a lot of these plays. The running play, they try to hand it to the fullback, which is not something they ever do. Now, that being said, you should be able to execute that. A lot of the plays that Michigan ran, they just did not execute them correctly, which is really confusing to me. They were one of the best teams in the country when, at executing what they were intending to do. And they just didn't do it in this game. So they give up, so they don't get any points on their first drive. Then they throw a pick six. They finally make a big play, which the referee screwed up and should have been a touchdown. And then they fumble the ball on the goal line. So it was like it allowed TCU to just get out to this lead. And if Michigan had just managed themselves a little bit better in the second half and it felt like they were trying a little too hard. Like they were behind and we had to get back in the game and they were really pressing, and that caused more mistakes.
Yeah. And,
look, TCU only completed 14 passes. Like, it's not like Max Duggan came out there and lit it up. Like, and I think what, to your earlier point about Michigan blitzing a lot, TCU's offensive line really did a good job. If Michigan was rushing 4, they could not get there. And so that caused all of these things to have to change. And TCU had the better game plan. They were ready for a lot of the stuff that Michigan was going to do. They were well prepared. And, they made all kinds of big plays. So you got to give them credit. I do think, I just think if you play that game 10 times, I think Michigan wins 7 or 8 of them.
Yeah.
And that's why it's a really, really bad loss for Michigan, because if you had told Michigan fans, okay, you're going to outgain them, you're going to throw for 70 or 80 more yards than them, and you're going to score 45 points, they would have said, oh, we're going to win.
Yeah.
They would have said, oh, you're going to win. But the difference, honestly, the game came down to both teams turned the ball over 3 times. Michigan's turnovers led directly to points or taking away points. TCU's interceptions were in the middle of the field. The fumble in the third quarter by TCU really almost put Michigan in control of the game. That was the one that was really bad. But for the most part, Michigan's turnovers were really bad and TCU's were not great, but they weren't terrible.
Right, and TCU, I mean, they've been playing with fire the whole year because they've had so many comebacks and they've had so many close games that, that may be a difference between them and Michigan, where Michigan was just physically dominating teams, especially in the second half throughout the season. They're physically dominating Big Ten teams, so they're not used to, having to keep going up and down the field. So the fact that they scored 45 points, that's really impressive, and they weren't necessarily running the ball a bunch. So yeah, it's just way too many mistakes. I mean, I think that's going to be one of those. Now, I don't know that they would have been able to beat Georgia in the national championship game, but I mean, this is one of those things where you're just going to look back and go, man, we had a golden opportunity to at least get to the national championship game, and they just, they made a bunch of mistakes. They were too cute, and they just didn't, they didn't get it done. They didn't make the plays they needed to make. So. And that's one of those things, not kicking the field goal at the beginning of the game. That's just one of those things that I don't really understand. We've talked about this a bunch on the podcast because it happens in the NFL too. Early in the game, you're tied at 0. It's your first drive of the game. Okay, you just had a huge run down the field. Okay, it's not 4th and 1; it's 4th and 2, and it's kind of like it's when you look at the risk reward of it, it's basically like, okay, well, if we get this, then that's huge, right? And then TCU's like, oh, God, we're behind, But if you don't get it, then it's like TCU's like, oh, man, we just avoided something. Now we got the ball back, Now, if you kick a field goal, it doesn't have the same effect as 7 points, but it's at least like, hey, we went down there, we got 3 points on our first drive.
Well, and the sequence there, it's like a major coaching blunder, right? They look like they're going to go for it on 4th down. They call timeout, and then they come back with the trick play. For the strategy makes no sense. If you're going to go for it, run the ball so that way at least TCU has to start with the ball on the 1 or the 2 yard line, right? So you have even if you don't score there, you're in control of field position, right? But they didn't do that, and they ended up losing 8 yards on the play, which basically gave TCU a big break. Where even if they hadn't done anything on offense, and I think they ended up punting anyway. You could have had them backed up. So yeah, there were a lot of questionable decisions like that by Michigan in this game. And, I do think it affected them, the fact that they were never really in a game this season where they had to throw the ball to win. Now they threw the ball against Ohio State, but Ohio State was playing 0 coverage. Yeah. So guys were wide open or one-on-one. Like it wasn't, he didn't have to throw against a set defense, and a lot of the big plays that Michigan made over the top were because TCU was defending the run. Like whenever Michigan dropped back and it was a straight up pass play, and TCU played coverage when they knew they were going to throw, Michigan couldn't make any plays down the field. So it's one of those things, and I understand why that TCU defense can be effective, especially when you're stopping the run, because there's so many guys you can put in coverage really easily.
Yeah, well, and just back to the 4th down thing. Like, I think some fans they'll get there's been times I've been watching football games and I'll college or pro, and I'll criticize a coaching decision, or I'll criticize someone tried to challenge a play. Why did you challenge that? Why did you call that timeout? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And I think some fans get kind of like, well, who cares? It's one little play. It's like, well, no, you don't understand. Like, usually in a lot of these big games, it's a few plays that come down to, well, someone made a mistake here, or the coach decided to do this instead of doing this. That ends up costing you the game. So,
and honestly, another way to look at it is the red zone. TCU was better in the red zone than Michigan was. That's why they won. They converted into touchdowns most of the time, or more often than Michigan did. And when it's a game like that, when the talent is relatively even, that's what makes the difference between winning and losing.
Yep.
But it's so funny though. After all of that, Michigan still had the ball with under a minute to go and I thought when they got the ball, I thought, if they can move the ball past midfield, they're going to win. I thought Michigan was going to win because I thought McCarthy it was kind of hot. I thought he could, because it's the last drive of the game. Now McCarthy can just run around and make plays, and he did a little bit, but. I really thought
did they turn it over? Or did they just lost on downs? Like they got to 4th down. And
the 4th down, and then the snap. They screwed up the snap on 4th and 10, and then that was it.
Right.
Which just kind of it was just kind of, it was one of those things that, it was one of those games where both quarterbacks would drop back to throw and they would wait and there'd be nobody open. And it's like they needed to make quicker decisions and run the ball. And I thought they should have let McCarthy loose a little bit more and just said, dude, you just run if you have to. So, all right.
Before we move on to the Ohio State game, let me just, I just thought of this. So, I think now for the most part, if you make the playoff, even if you lose, I think people kind of go, that's a really good year, right? Michigan obviously had a really good year. They went 13-0. They reached the college football playoff. They were in a really close game. They didn't get boat race like they did last year. Okay. But I'm wondering, because there's only 4 teams in the playoff, when this expands to 12, is making the playoff going to be enough, not for any team, but for the upper echelon teams, the big brands like Michigan, Ohio State, Bama, Georgia, all those teams? Is that going to be enough? Because right now it is, but does that change when there's 12 teams?
Yeah, well, and especially the way it's going to work. Like if you're a big brand, you're going to have you're likely to have a favorable matchup in the first game you play. So I think if you're not in the top 4, right, where you get the bye, you're going to be expected to win that first round game.
Yeah,
because it's likely to be at home.
Right.
Right. If you're in the top 8, it's going to be at home. So you're going to have to win. That game's going to have to be a must win. And then the quarterfinal game, I think it kind of depends. But yeah, and for teams like Michigan, Ohio State, that's more about beating the rival, right? Like Michigan's in pretty good shape. They beat Ohio State 2 years in a row, so they're looking pretty good.
Right.
It's not but yeah, it's a good point. There's going to be so many teams that are going to get into the playoff every year, like.
Well, because the teams that like a team that makes it in one year and then doesn't make it in again for several years or just ever again, like they're just getting in, they're just going to be happy to be there. But some of these other teams, they're going to be like if you don't win any games in the 12-team playoff, like if you don't win 1 or 2 games, I think there's going to be a lot of fan bases are going to be like, oh, this year sucked. So I just think that's going to be interesting to look forward to in 2 years. So
yeah. So moving on, Ohio State, Michigan, Ohio State, Georgia, excuse me.
Yeah.
Georgia pulled this one. I mean, I think I texted you, Georgia pulled this out of their ass. They were, I thought coming into the game, I thought both games would be close at the half. And then I thought Michigan and Georgia would take over. And Ohio State, as I thought they would, they played really well. They came out swinging in the first half. They put up 28 points. Like the offense was humming, like they were doing, what they needed to do. And, it was CJ Stroud finally, put it all together in a game. We've seen him have good games over the last couple of years. We've seen him throw for lots of yards, but we never saw like a complete game like he played this year, where he ran with the ball when he had to. He made all the big plays when they needed him. Put up all kinds of yards and points and, did his job, about as well as you can do. And, and I thought Georgia was on their heels for a lot of the game. Like you could see it, like they're like, oh, we can't cover them, especially Marvin Harrison Jr. They couldn't cover him at all. And so Ohio State was just moving the ball up and down the field. And then they have a 14-point lead in the fourth quarter. And you're thinking, I'm sitting there thinking, man, like it's really hard to repeat. It's hard to repeat as champions. It's really hard
Georgia's
to do.
They're not as good as they were last year. They lost all those defensive players to the NFL. And, they're still really good. But it's harder to keep going like that. And Stetson Bennett is, he's good, but it feels like in a big game he's going to make a mistake that may kind of hurt you a little bit. And then he'll make some other plays. I mean, he was really good the last 2 drives to get him the lead. But
yeah, no, he was clutch. When they needed him to be clutch, he was clutch. He threw an interception earlier, kind of got him into trouble a little bit. And Georgia's defense came through in the last couple drives to keep Georgia alive with a chance to do it. And, but it's funny, though, when, Georgia went down and scored and took the lead, I thought, oh, there's too much time. Ohio State's going to win. And they got into field goal range, and
it was a 50-yarder, but still,
right. And they had three plays to try to get more yards, and they weren't able to do it. I was like, you need about 10 more yards. If you get about 10 more yards, they're in good shape. But they couldn't do it. They ran the ball once. They tried to throw a couple of passes. He had to throw one away because the pressure got to him. So I thought that was a big big mistake by Ohio State not getting some more yards to make that field goal easier, because I thought, when Georgia scored, I'm like, oh, there's too much time. Ohio State's going to win because of the way their offense had played the whole game. I'm like, they can get 3 points. This is no problem. But you got to give it to Georgia. I mean, when Stetson Bennett needed to make big throws, he did.
Yeah.
I mean, the last couple throws in the game there, the one to Bowers and then the one in the end zone, they were fantastic.
Yep.
And I think it really, I mean, it was similar to last year when Alabama lost their receiver against Georgia. They lost their best receiver, and then Georgia managed to win. Ohio State lost Marvin Harrison, in the second half, and that really affected their offense. They only scored, I think, 13 points in the second half. And so, and 3 points in the fourth quarter. So it was, I really thought Ohio State should have won that game. I thought they really, they played well enough to win. Just Georgia was a little bit better.
Yeah, a little bit better when they needed it, but yeah, they kind of escaped that one, and Ohio State, it's pretty ridiculous that there was that after Ohio State lost to Michigan again, people were like, oh, well, should we get Ryan Day out of here? Like, if you want to criticize their defense a little bit, I mean, okay, but I mean, offensively, they seem to just continue to recruit quarterbacks and receivers, and their offense can score points. Okay, and I mean, they almost won that game. I mean, you're relying on a field goal kicker, and I guess there's a few other things you could kind of criticize, but I mean, like the timeout on the fake punt, because Georgia called that timeout, and Ohio State would have converted, and they would have continued moving the ball. So, yeah, it's just one of those things where a few plays made the difference, and Georgia just found a way to escape. I mean,
Yeah, and like watching that game, I was kind of like, I'm watching and I'm just going. The first thing I noticed, number one, watching the Georgia Ohio State game, the talent level on the field much higher than TCU and Michigan. Like, you can tell
TCU
immediately
has some speed that can help them, like Ohio State did. that can help them against Georgia, but I don't know that they have anywhere near what Ohio State has. So
yeah, so that's what I mean. The talent level, and Ohio State recruits at a really high level. Like they have NFL bodies all over the place, which just confuses the crap out of me. I'm watching it going, how did Ohio State lose to Michigan? Like you've got better players, so it comes down to. I mean, to me, it just comes down to coaching. Like in those games, Harbaugh has been the better coach. And so that's why I get some of the criticism of Ryan Day, because in those last 2 years, he's been outcoached. And because it's not a talent problem. Ohio State has plenty of talent. And the thing is, it's not like, a lot of people are looking at the way that Michigan-Ohio State game ended as if Michigan dominated them, and they didn't. Ohio State had the lead at halftime. It was a one-score game with 7 minutes to go, and then Michigan exploded and won the game. But it just kind of baffles me. And the other thing, just like I was talking about C.J. Stroud, like, why didn't you play like this against Michigan?
Yeah.
Like, he played this game as if his life was on the line. Why didn't you play this way against
Michigan? He was much better in this game than he was against Michigan. I was watching Michigan, and I'm like, I see that he's talented, but, like, dude, are you going to make more plays? Like, what's going on here?
He did. He was like, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to win this game. And that's how he played. And it was just, you saw how impossible it was to stop.
Yeah.
So it just kind of confused me. It was just like, man, watching, it was just like, I was complaining earlier. I was kind of like, I was a little bit down on Ohio State. Well, they proved me wrong. They proved that they deserve to be in the playoff. I don't think it was a question. I just think that they just had a bad, that one day. Michigan beat them on that one day.
Yeah.
And that happens sometimes in college football. Just a quick comment on the referees. I mean, we've got to do something in college football to Joel Klatt was talking about this. We need to unify the referees. We can't have ACC referees and SEC referees and we need to come up with some kind of unifying group here, because the officiating, especially in the TCU Michigan game, was ridiculously bad. That play was a touchdown, first of all, and they showed it, when Michigan threw the long bomb for the touchdown, they marked the ball 2 yards farther away than they should have.
Yeah.
So it should have been a touchdown anyway. And when you look at the replay, that was clearly a touchdown. There's no way that should have been overturned. And then, the roughing the passer penalty. I'm not saying it favored either team, more than another. I don't think it did. It was just terrible. And so we've got to do a better job. These are championship games. Like, we cannot have, refereeing snafus in these games. It's ridiculous. So I put my hands together and pray that they don't screw this up in the championship game.
Yeah, and also, I mean, because I had recorded the games and I was watching them back, so I was able to fast forward. I know I've said this numerous times, but it's just, guys, you've got to speed these games up. This is ridiculous. I mean, these games take it's like, I mean, the reviews, I mean, it's like literally, especially because I'm fast forwarding, right? I say, oh, they're going to review this, and I click, because on my iPhone, it has like a fast forward 15 seconds or 30 seconds, right? You fast forward 30 seconds, still reviewing, 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds. Are they done yet? They're going to commercial. All right, they're coming back. Are they done yet? I mean, like, it just goes on and on and on and on.
Yeah, the replays have to go faster. They've got to make these things better for a TV product.
Yeah.
Because, in college football, they want to be competitive with, the most watched things on television. You've got to do this to get the TV ratings up. You cannot, so yeah, we've talked about this a million times over.
And it's so apparent because when college football's on Saturday, well, this game happened to be on Saturday, but usually it's on Saturday, right? So you watch Saturday games, and then you're watching Sunday, right? And then you're watching an NFL game, and it's like you look up and you go, oh my God, the first quarter's almost over. And you're like, it's only one, the game starts at 1, and it's only like 1:37 or something. You're like, wow, okay, this is way better. So it's just something we've been working on, but yeah.
Yeah, I just think they could make the product better. So, yeah. I mean, looking ahead, I think we should have another podcast before next Monday when the championship game is. But, look, it came out Georgia's favored by 13.
13 and a half. Yeah. I thought it was 13 and a half.
Well, 13 and a half, and I think it went down to 13.
Okay.
But, yeah, I think, which tells me, by the way, the money's coming in on the underdog. Look, I just think Georgia I just think they have a real talent advantage over TCU. I think it's significant, and Georgia doesn't need to. They're better if they run the ball, but they don't have to run the ball to beat you. So I just don't see TCU competing with them for 4 quarters. I think maybe it's a close game at half, but I think this is likely a Georgia pretty easy win.
Well, yeah, I basically think that. Now, they had, I don't remember the running back's name, but TCU's running back got injured in the game.
Yeah,
and they were saying that was a pretty big deal. So if you get him back, but also I just think in order for TCU to win, Max Duggan's going to have the game of his life. He can't only complete 14 passes and have them win. He's going to have to go there and, like, this whatever speed TCU has, they're going to have to use that, and they're going to have to, make plays down the field.
Right. The only thing that would give me pause is that Ohio State's receivers were able to do stuff against Georgia's defensive backs. So maybe, and TCU has 2 or 3 good receivers. So maybe they can do some of that.
I think that's where their only strategy really is. You got to get some plays down the field with those guys and try to equalize things, because I just, I don't think it's just going to be tough for you to physically compete with Georgia for 4 quarters, like you said.
But Georgia, one of Georgia's tight ends look like he's going to be out. The big tight end, I forget his name. They still have Bowers, he'll be in there. But with the other tight end that they like to use a lot, and they like to use a lot of 2 tight end sets. So we'll see how that affects them. But I don't think it's going to be the same against Michigan's defense. Is a little different than Georgia's, and I think they're going to have a harder time with Jalen Carter and a couple of those guys on Georgia's line that are nightmares. So we'll see. But you saw what it took. It took an all-time performance by C.J. Stroud to really do what you need to do to Georgia, and the only time that happens is when it's a quarterback like that. And so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I think TCU might be competitive for a half, but I have a hard time, thinking Georgia's not going to beat them. And remember, like, TCU spent the whole month getting ready for Michigan, and now they only get 8 or 9 days to get ready for Georgia.
Yeah. So that's a different right. So, all right.
So, but I'm looking forward to it. If that championship game is anything like the semifinal games, we're in for a treat.
Yeah.
Man, that was a hell of a night of football. Like, that was that was fantastic. Like I hope, and by the way, I hope there's more to come. I hope the 12-team playoff brings more games like that, because that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get to the downer portion of the podcast. As you know, the Dolphins season is circling the drain.
Yep.
You know, it's a toss up between circling the drain or going down in flames. Hindenburg, I'm not sure, you know, what the best reference is for the Dolphins season.
Pile of garbage. It's you know, it's a trash fire. I don't know.
Yeah, hot garbage. So look, I mean, about the game, as far as the game goes, I mean, the Dolphins had about 7 starters out. I mean, and their best players. They had Armstead out, Xavier Howard was out. Like they had so many guys out that wasn't even close to the team. You know, the team that they normally are. But they had a 14-7 lead, and I thought they were kind of in control of the game. Honestly, I was like, wow, the defense is playing well. Then it's like, okay, we're playing the Patriots. I have to temper my expectations.
Yeah.
It's not that hard. It's not that hard to stop New England from scoring. And then Teddy I knew the game would come down to one play or one mistake, and Teddy Bridgewater made it.
Yep.
And threw the pick 6 and got injured on the play, which caused me to text you like, can we keep a quarterback healthy for 5 minutes?
No.
Like, I'm just trying to think. So Bridgewater couldn't play. He played against Cincinnati, right? And then we tried to start him the next game. He got hurt on the first play, right? And then Skylar Thompson had to come in, right? And then he couldn't play against the Vikings or whatever. Like he was the backup
against
the
Vikings, I thought.
But he came in. Skylar Thompson started the game.
Oh, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then he came in, and then because Skylar Thompson got hurt. So it just, like, what is happening? Like, I know that quarterbacks get hurt. I know there's been 65 starting quarterbacks this year. I get it. A lot of teams have used 2 or 3. But, I mean, could we catch just a little bit of a break?
Well,
could we just...
I wonder maybe if the silver lining to this is that the Dolphins organization decides that, hey, whatever quarterback we take next is not going to be some small, brittle guy. It's going to be a huge dude with a big arm, because we're tired of this, you know, quarterbacks continuing to get hurt thing. So,
well, yeah, and like Sean Payton was saying this on Colin Cowherd's show today. He was like, you know, why don't we just make a rule in the top 15 picks, we're taking prototypical size? Like, he said prototype for the position, right? Whatever the position is, we're going with the prototypical size, like in the top 15 picks, because it's not necessary. Like, if you want to take, and again, this drives me nuts with the Tua conversation. Well, but Drew Brees and Russell Wilson. Yeah, but Drew Brees was taken, I think, the last pick in the first round. Russell Wilson was taken in the 3rd round. Like, if you want to take a guy who might beat out his expectations later on in the draft, be my guest. Go ahead. Okay, but in the top 15 picks, I'm taking like, there's a reason that it works. I'm taking prototypical size. You know, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean, well, and I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but it's like when you cite Drew Brees and Russell Wilson as examples, can we just slow down a second? Okay, Drew Brees was in San Diego. Like, it took till like the 2nd year for people like, oh, he's pretty good, right? And then they made the playoffs, and the next year they were good. He wasn't great, and he gets hurt. Okay, then he goes to New Orleans. They make the playoffs. And then, like, they would kind of make the playoffs and miss the playoffs. They win the Super Bowl. Then there was kind of some years where they missed the playoffs. Then they're making the playoffs. They're really good, you know. But Drew Brees was, you know, he put up tons and tons of numbers. But, you know, he still struggled a little bit because of his lack of size. I mean, sometimes he was struggling to look over the line, you know. And Russell Wilson, he had like an all-time defense when they won the Super Bowl and when they made it back to the Super Bowl. So, you know. And I think Pete Carroll must be a pretty good coach, given the fact that Seattle kept winning, and also Seattle could make the playoffs this year even without Russell Wilson. So I got to think that he must be a pretty damn good coach. So, you know, you can't just cite those exceptions and then go, oh, well, that just means that, you know, a small quarterback anywhere else in any situation is going to be successful. Well, no, you need certain things to be right.
No, 99% of them don't work. You know, so, I mean, look, the crazy part about it is the Dolphins have lost 5 in a row. I mean, if Tua's playing this weekend, I think they're making the playoffs because I think, basically they just need the Patriots are playing Buffalo. I expect Buffalo to win that game, and they're going to try to win it because they need to, try to keep their seeding in place. So I think the Patriots lose, and the Dolphins are playing the Jets at home. And we saw what the Jets do. Well, yeah, the Jets are out of the playoffs, and we just saw what they do on the road. So, it's crazy to me, but I still think, and even without Tua, I still think the Dolphins could win.
Well, I think it's going to be without Tua. I saw some quote from Tua that he's saying, hopefully I can play in the playoffs if we make it. So I don't know,
Yeah, I mean, and that's it's really, so basically my question to you, I think I asked you this last week. Do you want the Dolphins to make the playoffs?
I mean, at this point, what's the point, Like,
right.
They've got all these injuries. Who knows who's going to be healthy? And they're going to be, if they get in, they'll be the 7 seed. So they could be playing the Bengals, the Bills, or the Chiefs. They're going to get crushed. Okay, it really doesn't matter. If them missing the playoffs causes Chris Greer to get fired, then the Dolphins GM, if it causes him to get fired, then maybe it was all worth it. But I mean, I do think that it's just one of those things where it's like, couldn't we have all predicted that this was how the Tua Tagovailoa era would go in Miami? I mean, isn't this pretty much how we kind of thought, because I think they probably pick up his 5th-year option, but they're not going to give him an extension this offseason, if ever. I mean, the odds, and the thing was, in the middle of the season, the odds of him getting an extension from the Dolphins were actually really, really high. And over the last month and a half, the odds of him getting an extension with the Dolphins have gone down dramatically. So now it's a question of, I think and we talked about this last week, but all this talk about, the Dolphins should go get Lamar Jackson or Derek Carr, or, Tom Brady or Kirk. Now Colin Cowherd today is saying they should go get Kirk Cousins, which I don't see why the Vikings would trade him. And also the Dolphins don't have the draft picks to go trade him, okay, because they traded a bunch of draft picks to get Tyreek Hill, and then they lost the draft pick because of the tampering with Tom Brady. So I think a lot of that's really overblown. I think, Tua is going to be the starting quarterback week 1 next year, barring injury, which that's a serious concern with him, obviously. He's going to be the starting quarterback week 1, and then we'll kind of see over the course of next season, we'll see where the Dolphins are at. But, I just, I really don't want them to make the playoffs because there's really no point. And I think sometimes people get this idea that, we made the playoffs, so that really means something. I mean, I guess sometimes it does, but when you're the 7th seed, I mean, I don't think that really means all that much. So
yeah, no, I've said this before. Almost half the NFL makes the playoffs now. So it's not the same accomplishment that it used to be. I think, I don't want them to make the playoffs either because, I don't really need to see them get crushed in a road game. I'd rather watch somebody else on my TV screen than watch the Dolphins get killed by a really good team. So I would, I would rather they just get the misery over with, lose the game and get out of here. And, and listen, to all the people that think, well, you guys are just haters. Look, this is why the reason we're sitting here right now, the Dolphins are no better than they were a year ago. They made all of these moves to try to make the team better. They're still 8-8. This is why I didn't want to draft Tua, because we're stuck in this situation now. We need him to play in order for us to make the playoffs. And we're sitting here going, well, is he going to play? Is he not? Our whole season now, our livelihood as Dolphin fans hinges on whether our tiny quarterback, who constantly gets injured, is going to be available when we need him. And so I'm just not interested in it. This is not I don't want this existence rooting for a team.
Yeah. Well, here's a question that they might ask on like First Take or like Speak or, First Things First or something. Okay. Is the Dolphins missing the playoffs disappointing? And let me just come at this as a Dolphins fan. Is it disappointing? Well, disappointing would imply that I expected them to do more than they're doing. And I'm a Dolphins fan. Are you kidding? Of course not. I'm not disappointed. I mean, I'm a little bit disappointed, but it's just like, this is what I expect. I mean, this is probably, this is definitely worse than, I'm trying to think of other disappointing seasons. There was one year where, this was like 2003 or something, where the Dolphins, we thought they were pretty good, and they ended up finishing 9-7. They lost to it was 2002. they lost to the Patriots in like the last week. The Patriots didn't make the playoffs, and the Dolphins were trying to get. They were in like a 3-way tie or something to try to get first place to try to win the division, and the Jets ended up winning the division. And yeah, that was kind of disappointing because they totally played like crap against the Patriots. And then there was the year when Marino tore his Achilles, and they were like 3-1, and then they ended up getting to 9-3, and then they lost 4 games in a row and they missed the playoffs. Which also was disappointing for us because we went to a game that year because we had never been to an NFL game before, and we wanted to see Dan Marino play Joe Montana because we got the tickets before the season. And of course, Marino pulls his Achilles, and Joe Montana wasn't playing. So it was Scott Mitchell versus Dave Craig, maybe. So no, as a Dolphins fan, no, I'm not disappointed. I pretty much expect disappointment with this team. So it's just...
Well, it's funny. Like we called it before the season. Like I said, like looking at the schedule, like, I think they're going to win 8 or 9 games. They have 8 wins right now.
10, yeah.
Right.
So
I mean, it's amazing how it just worked out exactly the way that we thought it would. So yeah, it's disappointing. I think it's the good part is though. I think it's clear to everybody. Tua is not the long-term answer at quarterback. Like, maybe we can keep him for a while and see what happens, but, long-term, we know there's going to be a different quarterback. There's no way you can't, continue along this path and think this is the way to go.
Well, and,
now,
and
listen,
also, you gotta
I'm also realistic about it, right? You have to do, you got to use what you have. And he's the best that they have right now.
Well, and I think, teams, the NFL is a business, and teams are kind of cutthroat in their decision making. So let's just be honest here, okay? If you're running a team, do you want to put a bunch of money into a guy who, forget just the idea of injuries, because Tua's had plenty of just regular injuries, okay? Now he's had multiple concussions, okay? What are the odds he has another concussion next year? I mean, it could totally like some of these hits he's taken. I mean, sometimes I just wonder. And again, I'm not a doctor. I don't know. But I mean, some of these hits, I just wonder if he were a bigger guy, would he be hitting his head like this? I don't know. I mean, again, I'm not a doctor. I don't want to, but it just feels like something when he gets hit some of these times, he can just get. I mean, like last year, week 2 against Buffalo, he just gets sacked by some guy, gets driven into the turf and breaks his ribs, and he's out for like a month. I mean, just little things like that, so, yeah, I mean, maybe it's, I didn't really want the Tua era to be that long in Miami, so maybe this is better. I mean, well, no, I don't want to say better. I don't want the guy to get head injuries. I don't want him to get hurt either. I'm not saying that. But, I mean, we can kind of see the limitations with his play, and then if he's going to be limited in the way he plays, and then he's not going to be available, I don't really see why the team would want to invest in him long term. So,
right. So, I mean, listen, I've wanted the general manager fired for about 2 years now. So nothing would make me happier than canning Chris Grier because,
and by the way,
7.
This is why you don't give up 5 draft picks for a wide receiver because the Dolphins were never a player away. They're multiple players away. Okay. They're still an offensive line away. They still need to fix that. Okay. So Teron Armstead made the Pro Bowl because, he's extremely good, and somehow he made that offensive line look like it was actually pretty good for stretches of the year until he got hurt.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Chris Grier's been the general manager for 7 years. They made the playoffs 1 time.
Yep.
So I mean, it's all that's all I need to say about that. All right, so let's move on to the NFL Sunday. We got one Sunday left of which always makes me sad. Only one more NFL Red Zone day. But yeah, so I just wrote down some teams that I wanted to talk about, and basically, I wrote down, do you buy this team or not? And I'm hearing some stuff about a few teams. I mean, first of all, these are the teams that I'm just out on. Okay, I'm out on Tampa. I'm out on Minnesota. Okay, I was never in on New England, so I can't be out on them, and I don't buy any of this Green Bay nonsense either. So, which of those teams do you want to talk about first?
God. All right. Let's talk about Tampa Bay because.
Okay.
Is this like a Tiger Woods kind of thing where Sunday at a major, people just crumble around? Like what I mean, now granted, I guess I shouldn't really say that. I mean, Carolina, they're not that good. Okay.
Right.
And some of these, like the Rams suck this year. Okay, I'm trying to think of who else he had a comeback win against. I mean, Arizona,
New Orleans.
He had to go to overtime against Arizona. Yeah, New Orleans. Like these teams aren't that good. So I have to think that when he's playing a better team, he's not just going to be able to sort of play like crap for 2 or 3 quarters and then come back in the fourth quarter. Now, granted, he played probably his best game of the year this week. But some of that can be, maybe Carolina should try covering Mike Evans. You might give that a shot. It might change. It might help you out a little bit.
You might want to cover the only guy that they can throw the ball deep to. You might want to cover that guy. Yeah, I mean, listen, it's really infuriating because Tampa's not good. This is a garbage team that doesn't deserve to be in the playoffs at all. Okay,
and they're going to get a home playoff game.
Right, they're behind in every game. Okay, they're always behind. Like that always happens. And then Brady comes through with a couple of bullshit drives in the fourth quarter, and it's like, you know what? Fuck off, Brady. Like enough of this shit. Like I'll go through some of this in my New Year's resolutions here, but I've had it with this garbage. And the thing is, if you're gonna play, like they're gonna get a home playoff game against the Cowboys. If I'm gonna pick a team that's favored to win a game and can find a way to fuck it up, it's the Cowboys.
Yep.
They're playing the one team that has no business hanging on to a lead at all. And I feel like the same thing's going to happen. The Cowboys are going to be up by 14 going into the fourth quarter, and Brady's just going to complete 5-6 passes to Mike Evans, and they're going to win. It's just I will say this. It does make the playoffs really fun. It does make them a lot of fun, but I'm not. The good thing is I'm not worried at all that Tampa's like going to go to the Super Bowl. Like, even if they win one playoff game, they're not winning a playoff game on the road. So I'm not really worried about them, but it is infuriating to watch them do this every week and nobody stop them.
Yeah.
I mean, Carolina, you have all backups in the secondary. Why do you not keep a safety over the top? How are you allowing Mike Evans to just run past you? It's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about Green Bay. Like, I know Green Bay beat the crap out of Minnesota. I'm not sure what that means. I mean, Minnesota has been blown out by.
Does anybody buy Minnesota? Come on. I mean, really?
Exactly.
No.
Exactly. So I'm sorry. I don't think. Oh, Green Bay's for real now. Seriously. I'm expecting, your text to me yesterday was great. Like, it's the annual Green Bay gets into the playoffs and gets smoked by San Francisco again. It's like, This happens every year. We might as well do it again. And right now, San Francisco is the 2 seed, so that's who they would play. And I'm sorry, Green Bay has no chance. None.
Well, I just think it's hilarious. In the NFC, it's like, basically, it's just going, okay, who do you buy into? And it's kind of like, the Cowboys, Minnesota, Eagles, they got a lot of injuries. Jalen Hurts hasn't played in a few weeks. Tampa Bay, God, fuck no. The Giants, Daniel Jones, come on, no. And then whoever the 7 seed is, I'm trying to think. It could be Seattle. It could be Green Bay. It's like, really? I don't buy it. It's like, who do you love? I don't love anybody in the NFC.
Yeah, I will say that the NFC playoffs are going to be tremendous. It's going to be amazing because every game you're going to have no idea what's going to happen. No, I mean Minnesota can't put 2 good games together in a row. They struggle with bad teams. They've got 11 wins by 1 score. I mean, it's bizarre. They have and by the way, Clark, they have a negative point differential.
Yeah,
they're 12-4. They're minus 19 on the season. How does that happen?
They're not going to make the playoffs next year. I'm sorry. They're not going to. They're going to win like 7 games. Okay, they're not making the playoffs next year.
I don't know how it happens. Number one, and number two, why can't that happen to the Dolphins? Honestly, if this fucking team can win 12 games, why can't the Dolphins win 12? I mean, come on.
Years, it can't happen to the Dolphins.
One time, we can't get one. Ridiculous. Goddamn ridiculous. So no, I don't. I mean, Minnesota, they may play remember, Minnesota played the Giants. They played the Giants last week, and they had to win on a last-second field goal. So they might play the Giants again. And no, we don't believe in the Giants, but
I don't believe in that could be a great game. I don't believe in either team. I don't know who the hell's going to win.
Going to be tremendous. So here's a team with some real problems. Philadelphia.
Yeah.
They've run into they are backsliding, and their offense looks pretty bad. Now granted, they didn't run the ball again. Again, this is a chronic problem in the NFL. These teams don't run the ball enough, especially when they've got their backup quarterback in the game.
Yeah.
They don't run the ball enough. They're throwing the ball too much, and Philly's in serious trouble. Now, look, the Giants don't have to play anybody. They can rest their starters if they want to. So the Eagles really should win the next game, but we'll see. And the thing is, I guess my question for you was, if Philly loses and San Francisco gets the number 1 seed, do you like San Francisco to go to the Super Bowl? Because I do.
Yeah, they only have 2 games. They're at home. Look, if they can run the ball, and their defense has gotten healthy, then this is the formula that got them to the Super Bowl a few years ago. So, and it's the NFC. I don't, people can go, I don't really trust San Francisco. Well, I don't trust these other teams. So you can, and like I said multiple times, through over the course of the season, whoever can go in the NFC, whoever can get into the playoffs and play their style, their way, and do what they want to do, they're going to the Super Bowl. So they've got a great shot. So we'll see if the Eagles lose. Now even if San Francisco doesn't get the 1 seed, I mean, they're going to get, probably 2 home playoff games. Right. So, I mean, they could still get into the NFC and then if you get into the NFC Championship game, I mean, you can make it to the Super Bowl. So,
yeah, I mean, I think the Eagles they're going to have to get Jalen Hurts back if they're going to win any playoff games. But yeah, it's and all the injuries they've had. They lost their right tackle. They got 2 of their corners out. I mean, they've got just, and this is kind of the case with the Dolphins basically the whole season. The Dolphins were teetering on the edge of too many injuries, and then this week it all came down on them.
Yep.
You know what I mean? All their best guys were out. The guys that they need to win were all out, and it kind of killed them.
Yep.
So Philadelphia may be in the same position where it's just they're not. In order to win in the NFL, you have to be getting healthy in December, and San Francisco is getting healthy, and the rest of these teams aren't.
Yep.
So then I just got some teams, like we talked about Dallas a little bit already, but 2 teams that I find interesting in the playoffs that, I'm really excited to see how they do is the Chargers and the Jaguars.
Yeah.
I don't think either team could win 2 playoff games against Kansas City, Buffalo, or Cincinnati. But, stranger things have happened. I didn't see the Bengals going to the Super Bowl last year either.
The Chargers would be the 6 seed or the 5 seed?
Right now, the Chargers are the 5 seed.
Right.
So
the Ravens just lost. Okay.
Right. So if Chargers Jacksonville, that could be the first round game, probably likely, because I just don't see Tennessee winning with Josh Dobbs at quarterback or whatever they're doing. I think Jacksonville's likely to beat them next week. So I don't know about either of those teams as Super Bowl wise, but again, the Chargers are one of those teams that are starting to get their guys healthy now, and Bosa's supposed to be coming back. So, if the Chargers are a team that if they could get hot, get on a run, you never know. You never know, because we've seen it. Kansas City, Buffalo, and Cincinnati, they've all had games this year where they're just a little bit off. Yeah,
my only thing is it's tough because if you're, for any of those AFC teams, because you may end up having to beat, like, in 2 consecutive weeks, the Chiefs and the Bills, or the Chiefs and the Bengals, or the Bengals and the Bills, or the Bills and the Chiefs. Like, that's really difficult to do. So that's one of those things where it's just going to be like, maybe it's just based on what the draw is and who you have to go through, and whoever's healthiest, that's who's going to make it through. I don't know.
Yeah. So, I think both those teams could be dangerous. I'm really happy with how Jacksonville's playing. I think it's great that, they're going to make the playoffs after it looked like they started out the season. They looked really good, and then they just
I think Trevor Lawrence's last, 6-7 games or something, he's been ridiculously good. So, and that's what you expected coming out of college, right? It's just last year, when you have a bad NFL coach, named Urban Meyer.
That's an understatement. Yeah. That's an understatement. Listen, I mean, there are plenty of teams with bad NFL coaches. Urban Meyer was a travesty as an NFL coach. That was a disaster.
Yeah.
So, talking about quarterbacks, I mean, like, I was watching the Raiders 49ers game yesterday, and I was thinking about this. Like, okay, so they take Derek Carr out, and the Raiders play better without Derek Carr.
Yeah,
like this So I know. Listen, I know people are going to be after Derek Carr. The Raiders are probably going to move on from him, which is why they weren't playing him because they don't want him to get hurt. He's probably going to go to another team, right? Because the demand for quarterbacks is just too high. You've got, somebody's going to get him. But is this another Russell Wilson situation where he just doesn't have it anymore? Because he couldn't play well with Josh McDaniels as his coach, and they've got plenty of offensive talent.
They got Devontae Adams. He's one of the best receivers in the league.
I mean, so it's really concerning to me. Now, look, as a Dolphins fan, if you told me, hey, we're going to give up 2 first-round picks for Derek Carr, would you do it? I would. I think it's worth the risk. But, man, I have major concerns about the way this has gone this year. And after we've seen, like I texted you, how many of these quarterback trades have worked out? Stafford and Goff, they both kind of worked out, right? They won the Super Bowl with Stafford. Goff's been playing well this year.
That's pretty good, yeah.
But most of them, they really don't. Carson Wentz has been a disaster in 2 trades, right? Russell Wilson is that's the worst quarterback situation in the league is Denver. Because they have Russell Wilson, they're stuck with him, and he's signed to a long-term huge deal.
Yeah.
Deshaun Watson got traded. Deshaun Watson has not been good. Now I'll give him some more time. But
he hasn't played in a while. He was too busy.
A lot of these
massages.
quarterbacks.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's right. No, he's not loose enough. That's what it is. It's so I don't know about these quarterback trades, man. And this is going to be something that happens now in the NFL going forward. This is going to be happening a lot. Because the demand for quarterbacks is so high now. If you don't have one, you might as well kiss your season goodbye.
Yeah. So, can we just take a second? Carson Wentz, God, he sucks. Okay? He cannot be starting. In week 1 next year, he cannot be a starter. He has to be the 2nd or 3rd string quarterback on some team. Okay? Because this is just bullshit. He's just bad. Okay? We've got too much evidence. He's just bad. Also, Matt Ryan, washed. He's done. Okay? Just enough.
I don't know about Matt Ryan. He may just be in a bad situation. I'll grant you that. I said it earlier this season. He cannot be playing on a bad team. If you got Matt Ryan, you have to be a good team. Like you can't be. The Colts were just a mess this year, and so I did kind of feel bad for him. But
for instance, do you think if say San Francisco had Matt Ryan right now?
I don't think Matt Ryan's any better than what they have.
Okay. Okay. No, I just wanted to see where you kind of were. Okay.
I mean, but I think he could. But he would. By the way, if he was their quarterback, no, he'd be playing well. Like because he's played with Shanahan before, and he was really good. So I think he'd be doing really well. I think most quarterbacks would be really good in San Francisco. You know what I mean? Like, because they wanted Kirk Cousins. Like, that's the thing that came out recently. Like, they were really interested in him, talking to Minnesota, see if they get him, a few years ago. Not now, but, so look, and, as a Dolphins fan, I would take Derek Carr or Kirk Cousins in a heartbeat. You wouldn't have to convince me at all. I would take him today. Like, problem.
I don't think Kirk Cousins is available because if you're Minnesota, why would you give up Kirk Cousins? Like, he's putting up numbers and they're going to make the playoffs. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. So, any other NFL thoughts?
Who do you think is going to win tonight? Because we got the Bills
tonight.
Game. Yeah.
Tonight, I like Cincinnati at home. I think Cincinnati gets it done. I don't know. They had some defensive guys out, so I don't know what the deal is with that. But they have most of their offensive guys. But they did lose one of their offensive linemen.
Yeah,
I think it's their center. I think so. That's going to be an issue because the Bengals need every offensive lineman they can get. But I think Cincinnati's going to be really scary in the playoffs.
Well, especially if they only got to play 2 games and it's at home.
I think Joe Burrow has got this thing down to a science now. I think he's figured out the calibration between when to go deep, when to check it down, when to run. I think he's really getting a hang of what to do, as the quarterback. So yeah, I do. Yeah, I like Cincinnati tonight. There's basically if Cincinnati wins, then they would move ahead of Buffalo into the 2 spot, but Kansas City would be the 1 seed. And if Kansas City loses next week, Cincinnati could take over the 1. But I don't think Kansas City is going to lose to the Raiders.
Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, because Cincinnati has 4 losses. Okay.
Right.
Right.
But they did beat. But if Cincinnati wins tonight, they would have beaten Buffalo and Kansas City. So
right.
Pretty impressive. I still, I haven't been knocked off of Buffalo yet. I mean, if you asked me today, I'd probably say Buffalo, San Francisco in the Super Bowl. That would probably be my pick.
Yeah.
I know Buffalo's got some issues, but I'm not off of them yet because I just think, when it comes down to it in these games where you have to, I just think Buffalo's just going to be very difficult to stop.
Yeah. Yeah, it's you can make a case for any of those 3 teams. It's tough for me to. I don't know. I mean, Kansas City. There's been times where I'm like, "What's wrong with Kansas City?" There's been times I'm like, "What's wrong with Buffalo?" Cincinnati seems to be peaking at the right time, I guess. So
I think Cincinnati is well rounded, but they don't have like the same knockout punch that Buffalo and Kansas City do.
Right.
Yeah. They don't. They're not going to beat you by 30. They'll beat you, right? And it'll be because of how well rounded Cincinnati can do everything well. They can run the ball well. They can throw the ball well. Their pass rush is good. The secondary is pretty good. They have everything at every level. So that's why they're difficult to beat. And that's why they play in all these close games.
Yeah.
All right. So before we get out of here, I wanted to go through some New Year's resolutions and see if you had any thoughts on what I came up with here.
Okay.
So, Happy New Year, everybody. These are things that I hope for this year, that I'm hoping for in 2023. That sports resolutions, by the way, I have, listen, we went through personal stuff. I'd be here all day. I have a lot of issues. So I think, these are the sports things these are things I really like to see. Number 1, Dolphins get a new quarterback. I'm not even that specific about it. We just can we get a new quarterback who's like 6'4" and doesn't get hurt every other week? That's what I'd like.
Yeah. That'd be nice.
That'd be nice. My second thing is Luka Doncic of the Dallas Mavericks. He gets some help. Hopefully they can make a trade or make something happen to give them a shot to win the title.
Yeah.
Maybe that doesn't happen this year, but I feel like there's several years where Dallas can figure that out. But that's something that I hope for. Tom Brady retires. I just described how I feel about this. I'm tired of this. Like, we've seen the Brady act 100 times. Like, I'm done with it. Like, move on, man. Like, go do something else. Go work.
Yeah, there's nothing else he's going to achieve that's going to be like, oh, well, now he's... Dude, I've seen him do tons and tons of comebacks. He's got every freaking record, every quarterback record imaginable, except for single season touchdown passes. I mean, and he held that for a few years until Manning broke it. So what? You've won 7 freaking titles. What, you're going to win another one, and we're going to go, oh well, that vaults you into the category of no one else is ever going to win 8 Super Bowls. Like what?
Yeah, I'm kind of done with it.
Now maybe he'll look like he's having fun if he goes somewhere else.
Look, I'm done with it. I'm tired of the speculation. What team's it going to go to? Is it going to be San Francisco? Is it going to be Oakland? Is it going to be Miami? Is it going to be? I'm tired of it. I've had enough. Now, by the way, contingency on that. Now, listen, if Tom Brady's going to come to the Dolphins next year, I'm going to have to get on. I'm going to have to get on board. I don't have a choice. Could you imagine what Tom Brady could do with these receivers? Just whatever.
They better make the offensive line better, but yeah.
Yeah, they do, but he gets rid of the ball so quick. I don't know that it even matters. It's
right.
Good enough right now, Justin Herbert wins a playoff game. For all the people that doubt Justin Herbert, first of all, what the hell's wrong with you? Do you have eyes? Are you fucking blind? And, I just want Justin Herbert to win a playoff game just to get people off his back. Because I feel like that's the first milestone. We've still got 2 or 3 years before they're like, why hasn't he won the Super Bowl yet?
You're right.
So can we just let him win a playoff game?
Also, he plays on the Chargers. I mean, in terms of, I'm a Dolphins fan, so I know about cursed franchises. I mean, the Chargers, they always screw shit up. So, you can't really.
Yeah, I mean, could we give Justin Herbert a little shine? Let him win a playoff game this year. Denver Nuggets win the NBA championship. Listen, I'm a huge fan. I've been a huge fan of Jokic forever. I really love their team. I love the way it's built. I love the way they do things. And I feel like this might be the year. There's no great team in the West. Golden State's really struggling right now. Like, I feel like Denver has an opening here where they might have a shot to win the whole thing.
By the way, can I point out that I said I thought Golden State would be have a title window last year and this year, and it may already be closed. I don't know. I mean, we'll see, because they're not really playing that well this year. They're apparently horrible on the road. I've seen their record.
Yeah, and Steph Curry's been injured, so there's still a long way to go, but I feel like there's a real chance for Denver to get one of those rings. Justin Fields turns into a star. Number one, because I just want to be right. Like, everybody in the 2021 draft who didn't draft Justin Fields is an idiot. Like, the Jets fans, by the way, look at the Jets today. You're telling me Jets fans wouldn't love to have Justin Fields? Like, get the hell out of here. The Jets, Carolina, Denver, like Washington, like every team who didn't take Justin Fields, the Dolphins is going to regret it. And, so I really want Justin Fields to turn into something. I think he's pretty good now. I think he just needs a little more seasoning, a little more work. And
they
could really be
maybe they
something.
need better offensive coaches there. I don't know. I mean, they've lost 9 games in a row. They haven't been,
Yeah. Zion Williamson to be healthy in the playoffs. I'm dying to see what Zion Williamson looks like in the playoffs. It would be tremendous.
Yeah.
He's killing people right now. Like, I want to see the Pelicans and him totally healthy so we can see what it looks like. Because, man, they are an exciting team. And with him, I don't know what you're going to do with him in a playoff series. He's going to be unstoppable. And then there's a couple I just kind of threw in here. The college referees to stop fucking up my viewing experience. Like, enough, guys. Like, come on. Like, stop taking forever with the replays. Stop screwing up these calls. Like, we've got to do something about this. And then the last thing, I just kind of threw this in here, but, I'd like Notre Dame to get Sam Hartman from Wake Forest. Sam Hartman entered the transfer portal the other day, and Notre Dame is apparently the first team on his list. I think Notre Dame's pretty good. If you give them a quarterback, they could be pretty scary. I don't think they're going to win the national championship, but, they have all of the other pieces. They have good offensive line, good running game, good defensive line, good tight ends. Like, they have a lot of stuff. If you just gave them, any kind of quarterback, they'd be awesome.
Yeah.
So that's my resolutions for 2023.
All right. Good stuff. Yeah, we'll see if the Dolphins get another quarterback. I still maintain that Tua is probably going to be the starter week 1, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's my hope. It might be a long shot, but listen, man, if they fire the general manager, look out.
Yeah.
Because Chris Greer still has to act like Tua is his guy. And I understand that. But if it's a new general manager and this isn't his quarterback, look out.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think the people are like, oh, well, I don't understand. The Dolphins have been saying all this positive stuff about him. That's because, that's how you have to manage the situation. Of course, McDaniel's saying stuff like that because, there really wasn't another option. So he needs to kind of pump Tua up to try to get Tua to be the best he can be so he can win as many games as possible. And, to McDaniel's credit, I mean, Tua's had the best year of his career, which, is...
Okay, and I'm reading a ESPN story from 6:20 p.m. There is no timeline for Tua Tagovailoa to return from concussion protocol, so they are prepping Skylar Thompson or Teddy Bridgewater for the game.
Yeah.
So
I think that's because he's had multiple concussions. And so they don't want to be screwing around. So
yeah, I don't.
And there's also been media attention and the Dolphins don't want to look bad, like they don't give a shit or they're not taking it seriously. So,
yeah, I mean, look, I still listen. The Dolphins can still win the game. It's not like they could have won that Patriots game. It's not as if it's impossible for them to win. Is it probably less likely now? Yeah, it probably is. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if the Dolphins came back, surprised us, and won the game. I was trying to see what the Jets Dolphins. So the line is even. So it's a pick'em game with the Dolphins backup quarterbacks against Mike White.
Yeah.
So yeah, at this point, I think we'd be better off let's just put us out of our misery. And I hate losing to the Jets, especially twice in a season. But
yeah. Well, and also I thought it was kind of. I mean, I said this last week. I thought it was kind of interesting. People were like, "Oh, the Dolphins should definitely beat the Patriots," and I'm like, the Dolphins have beat the Patriots like 4 times in a row. It's really tough to just keep beating a team again and again and again and again. I mean,
Well, not if you're significantly better than them. If Tua had played, they would have won.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. Tua played like shit the first time they played the Patriots this year, but
they still won.
That's true.
Like the Patriots aren't good. Like that's what that's a comment on. It has nothing
Yeah.
to do with how good the Dolphins are. The Patriots just suck. Anyway, so yeah, looking forward to it. Last weekend of the regular season in the NFL, so should be a lot of fun. And I'm always looking forward to the playoffs. So we got college football championship game next Monday night. Last weekend of the regular season, NFL coming up, and it's going to be looking forward to a good 2023. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, tell us how right we are or how wrong we are, whatever it is. And Happy New Year, everybody.